So now they're stuck in between this rock and a hard place where they cannot give us any reason why it benefits us without pissing off China or making that declaration. And then the only reason it looks like we're in there is just because Israel needs it.
Yeah.
Right. And then naturally, Americans are furious about it. Right. Because we're like, how the fuck does this benefit me? I can't afford to pay for college. I can't buy a home. I can't pay for health insurance. And we're going to spend billions of dollars on a war in a country I can't even point out on a map. How is this beneficial to me?
Yeah. Yeah. That's how they feel already.
Yeah.
That clip might have sounded like it came from a progressive activist, but it came from a conservative comedian who pushed Donald Trump into the White House in 2024. And he's not alone. Trump's war in Iran is causing an all-out civil war within the MAGA movement itself. You have conservative comedians who are disavowing their support for President Trump. You have sitting Republican senators who are calling out conservative media figures. And you have right-wing pundits who are calling out each other, saying that they're betraying the America First movement. This is causing something that we've never seen before, the right wing fighting over war. The first crack in the MAGA coalition came from an unexpected place, conservative comedy podcasts. Andrew Schulz ran probably one of the most successful comedy podcasts in the country, has said that Americans are becoming deeply angry about another potential Middle East war. This timing could not be worse, according to Schulz, as Americans are already fed up with rising housing costs, lack of healthcare, increasing student debt, and an affordability crisis that we haven't seen in decades. And yet Washington is suddenly talking about another massive military conflict. Schulz also pointed out something that Americans know all too well. The Iraq and Afghanistan war lasted decades and cost the taxpayer trillions of dollars. Those wars killed thousands of American service members, killed hundreds of thousands of civilians, and ultimately ended without achieving any political goals that the U.S. promised. There was no stability in Iraq. We left a power vacuum, and it did nothing for our own strategic goals. For many Americans, especially younger voters, the idea of repeating that cycle feels insane. Isn't that the definition of insanity? Trying the same thing over and over again, expecting different results? That's exactly what Donald Trump is doing right now. But arguably one of the largest feuds between Republicans is Senator Ted Cruz and conservative media figure Tucker Carlson. Carlson has been one of the most vocal opponents of this war and has warned against the consequences of this continued conflict. His broader argument is pretty simple. If you corner a major regional power like Iran, escalation becomes almost inevitable for other countries to get involved. But Ted Cruz was furious. In a recent interview, Cruz accused Carlson of spreading what he called anti-American propaganda. The Democrats and the press are trying to undermine President Trump, and they're trying to undermine the U.S. military, and they're trying to bolster Iran and the Ayatollahs. Do you know who else is doing that? Who else? Tucker Carlson and the rest of the so-called woke right, began Cruz on his podcast, The Verdict. There is a group of isolationist folks on the right. It is a small group, but they are loud and vocal, and Tucker Carlson has now all but declared war on President Trump's foreign policy. I want you to listen to Tucker Carlson in his latest show. I'm going to warn you, what he says here is shocking and is to the left of Chris Murphy. So it is more anti-Donald Trump than Chris Murphy and the Democrats. Listen to Tucker Carlson, Cruz said before playing the clip. So if you have any slight disagreement with Donald Trump, bombing another country and using taxpayer money that we've already seen fail after decades and decades of conflict, apparently you're anti-American. You're anti-Trump. Again, this is the same Tucker Carlson who has been a staunch supporter of Donald Trump for a decade now, also said that we need to stop all immigration coming to this country from so-called third world countries, and has been a believer of the great replacement theory that he spread propaganda on all of his platforms. This guy's not a left-winger. He's not anti-Trump from a progressive standpoint. He is a right-winger, but he recognizes that we should not continue these types of conflicts when we already have so many problems domestically here in this country. But it's not just Tucker Carlson. Another major conservative media figure has also joined the fight, Megyn Kelly. Kelly recently escalated tensions inside the MAGA world by blaming longtime Republican war hawks for pushing Trump into this conflict. In particular, she singled out Lindsey Graham, one of the most aggressive voices calling for confrontation with Iran and other nations as well. Lindsey Graham has said that Saudi Arabia may potentially have consequences if they don't join the U.S. and Israel against Iran, and is really just calling for war with any country who wants the smoke. Kelly also slammed her ex-Fox News colleague, Sean Hannity, after he did a softball interview with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, whom she sees as ultimately responsible for persuading Trump to greenlight his Operation Epic Fury. Bibi's not dumb, she said, using Netanyahu's nickname. He would know how to talk Trump into it, which is clearly what he did. Hawkish conservative commentators like Mark Levin and Ben Shapiro disagree with Kelly's criticisms, particularly concerning Israel's influence on Trump. Last week, Shapiro labeled her an unbelievable coward, while Levin dubbed her a crazy grandma groiper. Vehemently pro-Israel Trump Uber fan Laura Loomer, who is also openly Islamophobic and pro-war, also joined in, telling Kelly, "Shut up, you stupid bee." She added that Kelly's not a MAGA. Jesus Christ. I mean, the all-out fury is hilarious. People like Ben Shapiro saying that Israel does not have a stronghold on U.S. foreign policy. What are we doing here? Are we living in the same reality? Marco Rubio openly admitted last week to the press that we went in because Israel was telling us that they were going to get struck. We went in because of Israel. It is undeniable. So what you're seeing now is essentially two different sides of the MAGA movement. One that believes America must remain aggressive on the world stage and essentially enter into as many wars as possible to assert itself as the dominant figure. And the other that believes America first was supposed to mean avoiding these wars in the first place and protecting our objectives domestically. This fight really exposes a larger problem within the MAGA movement itself. For years, basically a decade, Donald Trump has postured himself to be the anti-war candidate. The person who criticized the Iraq War, President Bush's hawkish foreign policy, said we're tired of these endless conflicts across the world. We need to focus on objectives here in America. This is him talking about it a decade ago when he began his political career.
The war in Iraq, we spent $2 trillion, thousands of lives. We don't even have it. Iran is taking over Iraq with the second largest oil reserves in the world. Obviously, it was a mistake.
So
George Bush made a mistake. We can make mistakes, but that one was a beauty. We should have never been in Iraq. We have destabilized the Middle East.
but so you still think he should be
I think
impeached?
it's my turn, isn't it?
You do whatever you want. You call it whatever you want. I want to tell you, they lied.
Okay.
They said there were weapons of mass destruction. There were none, and they knew there were none. There were no weapons of mass
Okay.
destruction.
That anti-war messaging became an essential part of the MAGA brand, but it was all a lie. Ever since Trump took office again, we've invaded Venezuela. We have invaded Iran. We are starting to cause conflicts with other allied nations. We're threatening to invade Greenland. This is one of the most hawkish Republican administrations that we have ever seen. And Donald Trump has completely abandoned all of his campaign slogans. We're seeing a lot of MAGA fans just completely reverse their decisions and say, yeah, we didn't actually really care about that anyway. We just want whatever Donald Trump wants. But some of these MAGA voices are saying, no, we actually meant what we said. We don't want to see continued conflict in Iran. And Andrew Schulz, Tucker Carlson, Megyn Kelly, and a list of others are starting to grow that resentment among the MAGA movement, which is completely destroying the coalition. For years, the MAGA movement seemed like one of the most unified political movements in American history. From the pundits to the politicians to the people that voted them in. Everybody seemed to be in lock. We believe what Donald Trump says. But we're starting to see that completely disintegrate. And that raises a lot of questions for the next election cycle. Because if Trump promised to end forever wars, what's going to happen when his supporters recognize that he's dragging them into another endless conflict?